Welcome back, everyone. Hope you're all having a good day so far. There are so many more exciting sessions coming up during the course of the day, so do not forget them. It is now time for an insightful dialogue on a future ready learning ecosystem to prepare your team for what's coming next. With Peter Kokkinos, who's the VP and Managing Director, Udemy Business, and Saurabh Wadhwa, SVP, Organizational Learning, Kotak Mahindra Bank. Welcome, Peter and Saurabh. The frame is all yours.
All right, hi, Saurabh. First question for you, mate. The world has undergone seismic shifts over the last few years, and it's been crazy, as you can all understand. And organisations have realised that their workforces just don't have the skills required for the future. Can you share, take us through the steps that Kotak Mahindra Bank have taken to prepare for the future and to try and mitigate some of these challenges that we're facing, specifically maybe even around things like the Great Resignation?
Yeah. So, Peter, I would start with some of the challenges that we experienced just when the pandemic hit and we hit the lockdown. We realized that a lot of people, it was completely a different new skills. Those were required at that point of time for people to, and it's a quick shift that was expected out of them to move into the roles, because not only there's a two large shifts from a learning standpoint. One was, how is the learning going to get delivered to learners now? Because the traditional way of learning was always a classroom. And then people adopted the new ways of transferring learning to learners. What many people could not adopt to is how the roles have evolved for the employees. That means all the people who were in the roles, for example, sales roles, credit roles, collections roles, etc., had to move it to a virtual interactions with customers and otherwise, which they were never used to. So this is a different skill and a competence required to be able to connect with customers and people across and manage teams on a virtual platform, which they were never ready with. So the two shifts, while how the learning is going to get delivered, how the roles have evolved, which would have clear impact on the learning designs as well. These were two large challenges instantly. People changed the delivery mode, but they didn't change the designs because the expectations of the roles were very different now. So it wasn't the same anymore. The need to have empathy became extremely critical for people because they realized that when we are connecting with customers with such a pandemic outside, in a state, it's critical to have empathy in being demonstrated in conversations. The virtual conversational skills were very different than the physical conversational skills that we would have. So that had to be, people need to be trained on. Other than that, the people were not equipped with the platforms, even though these platforms existed for years, but nobody was using it at that point of time. We realized that there was a need for people to be trained on use of these platforms too. So the transition that we had to make is the way you would deliver learning and how the roles have evolved in these times. And those changes need to be incorporated as used cases in the current content and the program designs. These were the challenges which we now quickly geared up. Other thing, I feel one of the things that changed in that the way people are supposed to learn now. We had normal 8 hours of learning starting morning and ending the day by 8 hours. And we knew that virtually it's not possible to do 8 hours and it has to be a blended way of learning, and learners need to be empowered far more before they come to a learning intervention. So it's on the new blended way of learning evolved, which is self-paced plus virtual, which was earlier self-paced and instructor-led classroom, but it's self-paced plus virtual. So the blended way of learning was it, and the new ways of engaging with audience has to be evolved too in a virtual platform. Looking at all these, the entire 360-degree, we worked on designs. We looked at how the learning transfer would happen, right from induction programs to behavioral programs to leadership programs, and we worked on that. And today I can comfortably say that for all the learnings that we have, we've been able to shift ourselves into the new ways of learning for people. We made the changes to design content and it's working seamlessly for us.
Yeah, that's not an easy shift. It's not an easy move either, really,
Yeah.
is it? I know how much work that you and the team have put into pivoting all of that learning and all of that, and trying to identify the skills as you're going along as well. I think one thing I really loved about what you just said there was it's just not just about the skills, but I think you talked about the way we should be reacting with people and the empathy side of things. It's something that people don't really think about, but with all of the other stuff that we needed to do, if we didn't have empathy for our fellow human beings as they were going through these challenges, I think none of that would have really would have helped, the organization or the people at all. So yeah, I love that. Really, really good, mate. All right, next question for you. In building this robust learning ecosystem that you've had to sort of create on the fly, where has Kotak Mahindra Bank invested most of its time and energy? That's the first question. It's a sort of double barrel question. So where have you invested most of your time and energy? And what have been some of the challenges and the learnings that you've sort of, identified along the way or have had to adapt as you've gone along?
So now our large part of focus was making people role ready was initially before pandemic, and we would have invest a lot of time in the competencies for the role. But then over a period of time, we realized that we got to invest a lot more in these areas because in a physical setup, you could call people only once or twice to a classroom training program. Suddenly we saw a big shift in the mindset of business that we could call people more frequently because learning is also seen as a ways to engage with people. And it's a constant upskilling process. That's the need of the hour, because we could also bring down the cost significantly because of doing it virtually. And we moved away from travel and accommodation cost, etc., which was a big part of a learning budget. We realized that we need to invest a lot more. So instantly we moved into 4 kinds of learning needs that we started addressing for learners, which is need of the role, need of the hour, need of the organization, and need of the individual. Need of the role is all the skills and competencies that are required for individual for employee to become successful in the role is need of the role. That's emerging out of the role, the key knowledge, skills, behaviors required to be successful. Need of the hour means instantly we had to move from physical to virtual. People need to be trained to the newer ways of doing things. That's need of the hour, and we build capabilities in people in being able to be effective in the new remote environment. We as individuals, as team managers, as sales, as operations, etc., in the new remote environment. That's the new skill. Need of the hour, because there was a sudden shift. Need of the organization, we realized that it's about now investing into building a strong culture, which is where a lot of around the transformation was also happening. Suddenly digital became a focus for the organization. So building digital mindset and capabilities and skills. Tech Academy, we started with a Tech Academy, building data mindset and skills. And similarly, service as a culture, that became very important. We started investing into that too. And the last bit that we looked at is the need of the individual, which would address individual performance gaps and behavioral gaps and aspirations. We also realized that because of the remote environment, the world became a one place. So it was geography agnostic, where we would do programs specific to geographies. We realized that we can have people across the geographies coming to programs, and we will never have a problem of having people in the program. So being a geography agnostic, we realized that we can also personalize learning to a large extent and focus on what the individual gaps are, performance and behavioral gaps are. We started investing into that, and what the individual aspirations are. Now we looked at how we can empower learners to learn what they want rather than we pushing them what they need to learn. So making a choice of a career, which is also addressing about the great resignation, because people now started looking at different opportunities, that we said, why not empowering people to take up careers within the organization and choose what they want to do rather than what they are expected to do. So, and they're mapping learning to them. So look, empowering them to choose learning what they want, when they want, and how they want is what we started focusing on, which really helped us. Yeah.
I love it, because you've solved a bit of a riddle for me, and you said it at the start. When in my career doing this for 20 years, the one thing that companies like Udemy really struggle to do is engage banks, financial institutions. They're very much focused on their own internal learning, on their own job-ready specific learning. They focused a lot on those areas. And we really couldn't crack the code with the more generic content that we had available. But we've seen a seismic shift in that change. We've had, I think, almost 20 banks come on board as customers just in recent times, all very much aligned to the things that that you talked about. So it absolutely is a consistent pattern that we're seeing across the industry and across, financial institutions and companies in general. So yeah, really good insight. I love it. Thank you for that. Third question.
Yeah.
What have you done to future-proof your learning ecosystem, both from a technology and a learner perspective? That's a big one. I know that's a bit of a challenge, but interesting to get your thoughts on that.
So, Peter, one of the things that we now doing it is now putting up a tech academy in place. We realize that digital is the business for us, because now how are people going to be? We want to be a tech company distributing financial products instead of a bank which is heavy into technology. So it is the reverse now. We're setting up a tech academy, building tech capabilities, not just into IT and digital teams, but across horizontally, where people need to know that where do we stand in terms of our tech competence as a bank? How can we onboard a customer using technology? How do we help customers by using technology? And how do we service customers using technology and digital? Is all that started building the current infrastructure and the capabilities in people as well. So all that is what we're trying to do is now is a true enabler role that we are playing in the role, rather not just a transfer of learning in terms of knowledge and skills, but playing a true enabler role in terms of future, preparing people to do that, which is a lot of things are getting digitized and automated. And now people are being trained on adopting those technologies and being able to do that. So that's the focus area, and which is going to help us for future too.
Yeah, I like that, because some people focus on, hey, we need to buy technology that's going to future-proof, but that's not what you're doing. You're thinking about how do we continue to invest in technology, stay ahead of it, change the culture of the business from being a bank to being a technology, as you said, a technology company that has banking services, and that's a very, very different way of approaching it. I love that. That's a great way to keep yourself abreast with ahead of the technology curve. All right, last question. Looking forward to this one. If you were to pinpoint a few future trends that could impact your learning or the learning ecosystem, what would they be? What are you seeing out there that's catching your eye, or future trends that are coming that we may need to be aware of?
So for us, I can specifically talk about Kotak Bank. We are investing big time on data and digital skills, because we need to now, there's a big shift in the company that how do we become more data focused. We understand that there's a lot more that data tells us rather than we go by what I feel, and there's more scientific ways of doing it. So across all the levels, how do they look at data differently, and what can data help us truly understand customer patterns and behaviors and take right decisions in that direction is what we wish to focus on. So that's one. Digital is another skill that we want to, as I spoke, discussed, shared it with you. Other than that, the service has suddenly become very important in the new environment, because how you engaging with customers, it's not purely digital because you have invested in technology. It has to be phygital, where there is but you need to decide where you need to move into high touch and low touch, and where is the technology going to step in, and where would a human interface is required, is where we are clearly defining that in terms of servicing customers as well. So that's another area that we are focusing on. Other than that, we are building a strong DNA as a culture, because in a remote working environment, a lot of times people do not connect with the culture of the organization, which is where we feel that now it's important to invest heavily on DNA and talk about what is the persona of the organization where people need to connect with. Because in a remote environment, when they are not interacting with people other than work, they typically don't understand the culture of the place. How we need to engage, we are engaging with them as our DNAs, and what is that makes Kotak what it is today is the DNA. We are investing big time on the culture part of it. So we have 4 pillars of a DNA, which is people DNA, customer DNA, risk DNA, and people and a business DNA. So we are looking at all the 4 pillars where people are to orient them how we look at in the spirit of each of these pillars and how we behave as a company in this culture is what we are investing big time. These are few skills. These are extremely critical. The other than that is now we are investing in creating a online. We are empowering people to choose careers, what they want to take up in the organization. That's a project, WIP, that we will let them choose their careers and build the capabilities to move in instead of them moving out of the organization and looking for opportunities. That within the organization ecosystem, there's so much that we can offer it to people to move in. And even if you are in sales and you want to move into a risk role, what will it take you to move into that role? And we empower people to acquire those skills, assess themselves, see where they currently stand at, focus on acquiring those skills, and eventually move into those roles. So that is how we are trying to engage with audience. Otherwise, because we are a sales, creating an early success is extremely important for us. How do we support and handhold employees in the early days of their joining the bank and create an early success so that their longevity in the bank is higher and they look at a career in the bank rather than just another job. Yeah.
So many amazing points in that. The one that resonated with me the most was the idea that you're focused on helping people with their career mobility, looking for new roles within your organization. If they don't see new roles and opportunities for paths and growth in your organization, they're going to go to another organization. And that's the real challenge. And we're seeing that across so many companies at Udemy that we're dealing with as well. But, so if you're listening to this and there's one thing you can take away from that last piece, I think having an idea of creating a career mobility plan, an opportunity for your employees to look at different skills and different roles within your organization. If you want to keep your best people, that's what you've got to give them going forward. So I love the insight, mate. I love talking to you. It's always a pleasure. I don't think I get to talk to anyone that's more thoughtful and has put as much effort into building out the ecosystem of learning in their organization as you are. I think your employees at your organization are incredibly lucky to have you and your team thinking about them and working hard for them and developing them. So well done, mate. Congratulations on the great effort so far. I look forward to a continued relationship with you. Thanks, mate.
Thanks a lot, Peter. It's a pleasure speaking with you.
Thank you, Peter and Saurabh, for putting out super valid points. Truly a learning experience for all of us. So let's proceed further and explore more.